Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Wisdom from the Edge. I'm your co-host Chris Noble, joined with Lisa Brazelton. Lisa, how you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I'm excited to talk about today.
Yeah, me
We
too.
are yeah, I mean this is something that I think you and I've had conversations about in the past. And so we're talking about what is self-awareness and what is this deeper level of consciousness through looking at whole being harmonics. I call it whole being harmonics.
It sounds like
Um
sounds like a really nice organic coffee bean style, kind of strain. I really like that. So, are we going to turn out into a delicious cup of coffee at the end of the episode?
I don't know. That sounds really good. A little cappuccino, a little
Yeah.
foam, sprinkle of some cinnamon.
Something delicious. For the listening and watching audience, Lisa, just before we started recording, showed me a really interesting diagram that basically breaks down an amazing approach to life in general. So, yeah, why don't we share our screen, or you can share your screen, Lisa, and bring us through this really fascinating, what would you call it? This three-pillar approach to
Yeah,
reality.
it's kind of a three pillar approach. I mean, I'm certainly happy to show my screen. So, or I can draw it. That there's a whole fun thing to do. But then I don't know, my drawing skills aren't what they used to be. So,
On the Zoom whiteboard, it's anyone's. It's a free for all anyway. So maybe a
I know it
diagram.
really is. Well, so I am, give me a second while I pull this up. And here we go. So So this is what I came up with it last year in developing what I think is the way in which we can be in harmony or having this harmonics as a constant, as an optimal level in which we as humans can operate. And so I want to go through these three pillars, if you will. And so we have our mental and emotional bodies. And this is where I think the head heart coherence exists. It exists in our mind, it exists in our heart. Um, I know we've talked about this before. We even can say that this head heart coherence goes all the way down to another mind that we have, which is the gut. And there's a lot of talk right now about how to work through our gut, which is a another brain, if you will. It acts as our intuitive compass a lot of times, and a lot of times we feel our emotions in our gut, right? But this, this going through our head all the way to our heart, and even through our gut, what's in the middle is our heart. And our heart has the ability, and they even, I mean, science, latest science has done a lot of research on measuring what the heart coherence actually vibrates, or the sound waves, and it's over 3 meters long, just based on some of the most extraordinary technology that can measure how big a heart coherence that we have, meaning that, outside of our physical body, we have these layers of energy, these auric fields that have electromagnetic pull to it. And when we're feeling really in tune with whether it's another person, whether it's ourself, maybe we're in nature and our heart expands, there is a measurement that it can expand up to 3 meters or even more. I would say that, our heart really has no boundaries, in my personal opinion. But I think it's a really interesting thing to think about.
Is this
Um,
a quick
yeah,
question? Is this
yeah.
field that we create, is this what contributes to when you meet and interact with people and you're like, oh, I got a good vibe from that person. I like their vibe. I like their energy. Is that what we're picking up on, do you think?
Absolutely. I think that we are able to non visually see and feel another person instantly when we trust that what we're feeling is accurate. I think we've talked about trust a lot in the past, and what does our intuition say? And we're really just starting to dive deeply into the teaching of how do we trust our intuition? What does that look like? And so I would totally, that's an affirmative on my end. I mean, when we meet someone, we could be like, wow, I feel like I know you, even though we've never met, or I really feel like there's this wonderful synergy. But at the same time, we can meet someone and have a real strong um, adversity to them. And that's also our intuition saying, hey, this is not necessarily a good fit for you energetically, whether it's a person, a situation, a decision that we're making in our life. Maybe it's a job decision, maybe it's a move, maybe it's a new house, maybe it's a whatever it is, right? That we can feel when something feels right or if it feels off. So, great question.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, the second pillar is what I call the physical and the physiological. It's the science and body, it's the physical construct, if you will, that I almost paradoxically is not even a construct because we're made of mostly water. Everything that we are is energy. There's more space in between our cells than there are, you know, what do they say? There's the space that's in between our cells is as vast as we are to our closest solar system outside of the Milky
Yeah.
Way. So it's
99% empty space, basically.
right, exactly. This is empty space. And so the way I see this whole body harmonics is to be able to understand that physiologically things happen innately within our body intelligence, and our physical symptoms, whether those are consequences to what we're thinking and feeling that don't feel good, as well as positive, because consequences is actually a neutral term, even though it's typically used to describe something that is uncomfortable or a dis ease of some kind. But there could be positive consequences. So when we are really and understand, I think, and I'm so happy that science and spirituality have really started to merge back together, but they have been so far apart for so long, that we now understand what's happening in our body from a cell regeneration perspective, knowing that new cells that are being reproduced, which happens every second of our waking and non-waking life, um, that it is based on what we are feeling the most. So new cells are being produced based on the peptides and the docking station, if you will, of the peptides, which are our emotions. So if we're not feeling positive, if we feel depression, if we feel anger, depression, or anxiety, we're going to produce more cells that are going to mimic that versus the previous cells that had died off.
So we
And
get
so this,
we
yeah,
get
go ahead.
more of what we feel, right? The more
We reproduce and rebirth what we think and feel inside at a cellular level, which I just think is so cool.
yeah.
And then talking about from a neural plasticity, a neurological perspective, we now know that our neural pathways continue. Those are the habits that we know and believe in, or trust, or are trying to break out of. And we know that when those neural pathways fire together, they stay together. But when we change a habit, when we're able to create new patterns, those neural pathways actually disconnect, and there are new neural pathways that come together. There's some really cool demonstrations of that, actually, I think you can find on YouTube.
It reminds me of when you're building muscle at the gym and you're kind of tearing some of the older muscle to make way for the new muscle. Now I know I'm not an expert at all. I could please the gym rats out there. Don't hate on me too much, but I'm trying to use that as an analogy for the neuroplasticity because that's like our brain muscle. No, I know it's not actual physical muscle per se, but it is that idea of like the neuroplasticity. The more we push ourselves into new experiences, as an example, the more we build these new neural pathways because it's constantly forcing us to continue to grow, right?
I love the analogy. We can always bring it back to our body, right? When it comes to understanding more complexities more simply. So, this last pillar is the energetic spiritual piece that encompasses our whole being, harmonics. And that is what we were talking about a little earlier. This is based on vibration and frequency. And we know that we are all a vibrational frequency of the way we think, feel, and act. And everything around us also has its own unique frequency of vibration that we can attract or uh, detract from depending on where we are. So, for example, if we really want money in our lives, but underneath the layers, our vibrational frequency is that we don't feel that we deserve it, or we continue to have an unconscious negative loop pattern around money. We can have as many affirmations as we want, but this that we are not really matching the abundance that's literally infinite and out there for everyone to receive. And a lot of the work that we're doing, like Chris and I, and the work that we're doing at Wisdom from the Edge, helps uncover the patterns that we are never aware of. And it brings them up to the surface so that we can release them. And I'm not talking about psychotherapy. I'm talking about vibrational frequency that can be there, and the next minute it could be gone forever. And that is part of this neural pathway change. It's also part of understanding that when we change our vibration based on our thoughts, feelings, and our actions, we then are able to match those things that we most desire.
I also, and let me know what you think about this, Lisa. I feel that all of those circles in this self-awareness, conscious development mind map you've got here, I feel like the emotional, as an example, completely connects to the energetic. Because our emotions are energy, or they're energy in motion, and our psychological connects to the spiritual, right? Or our physical connects to our mental. I know my mental health is completely connected to my physical because I go crazy if I don't move my body and do yoga, as just as a basic example, every day. So they're all also interconnected. They relate to one another. And I think most people, myself included for most of my life, have lived in a state of certainly aware of some aspect of my physicality, and that's not even a full awareness of my body. A lot of us are not very embodied and are not that consciously like living in our bodies, but that might be as far as we can get. We forget and neglect a lot of the emotional, mental. Maybe we're more of a mental civilization these days, so that gets more attention. The physiological, yeah, that gets some attention, but the energetics and the spiritual usually completely get missed. And
Mm-hmm.
we need all three of these pillars to be
Mm-hmm.
a fully functioning human being. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to say that I appreciate that you want to draw lines to all of these. And to be honest, and this is kind of just to clarify, this does not mean that these are separate pillars. They are literally all interconnected. So if I were to create a Venn diagram, um, they would all have touch points. We could create an entire circle around this whole thing.
Right.
We can connect lines to each and every one. So our mental affects our energy, our physical affects our emotion, our psychological affects our mental. And, so it's all this,
It's all
they all have to have its attention in order for us to have, again, this whole being harmonics. Um, and I will also say that, yes, Chris, the energetic spiritual, um, in mainstream, I would say, typically gets either pushed to the side, or it is less important. And then again, for maybe people that are in the spiritual community, that is their number one. And then their physical body is not very healthy, or maybe their mind and their emotions are not in balance, but they're energetic spiritual. So, you hear this a lot where, the starving artist syndrome. Well, in my model, there could be this incredible creative genius that comes out of someone doing amazing artistic work, but maybe their mindset is that I'm never going to make any money when I do for doing this, or I have to be just as good as XYZ or else I won't be successful, just as an example. So um, yeah, well, thank you for letting me share this. I was thinking today, what can we talk about? And I thought this just came to mind. So clearly it's meant to be shared.
I love it. And is this possible to have it available for people to download, or is this available on the Wisdom from the Edge website? Is there any way that people can follow up on this?
Sure. I will have it in my next book, Becoming Self Mastered. So there's the opportunity to see it there, and I am happy to share it on social media. We do not have that. I think maybe we have that somewhere on our website. We have so many pages.
You can
I'm
always
not
refer
quite
back to
sure.
this episode, everybody.
Yeah, that's true.
You refer
That's
just
true.
back to this is like your tutorial episode for the three pillars of operating this beautiful human body, mind, and soul. And like with Lisa's books, they're always available in the description below, no matter what episode we're talking about here. So if you're watching this years down the road, that book's already out now. Go grab it. And
Woohoo! I'm excited. We're already creating the future
isn't that
before it
fun?
happens. Yes. Well, this is a book, Becoming Self Mastered is a book that has been um, in the works for the last 5 years. That's been a record for me. I have never taken this much time, but I also think and you may, Chris, and audience, you may also understand this, is that sometimes we can be really impatient when things that we want aren't actually happening at the same time that we want them to happen,
Hmm.
which is partly what's a big part of what's going on here with me in this next book. Um, but I have to understand by going through what it is that I'm writing in order to write it.
Yep.
So it's hard for me to write something. And I will say that it doesn't always happen. A lot of people will just put stuff out there. And again, I'm not saying anything negative about all of the wonderful, artistic writers that are out there, but sometimes we can mislead ourselves into thinking that because we write a book, we're actually an expert at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I call that premature transformation, transcendence, basically premature transcendence, um, because we have to go through it in order. And what is there really to be an expert about when we have lived a life so much that we can then create the information for others to learn from, really. And whether it's one person, 100 people, or a million people, the right people will get that information. But it's probably just like your music. I mean, you have to just really feel it. I mean, it has to like come from all different places, and what you wrote and produced a year ago isn't the same thing that you're doing today because you're not vibrating at the same frequency, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then I'll sometimes be, even just last night, I was going through some of my old music I just had written and discarded, put in the archives, and I heard a piece that I think I wrote like maybe 5, 6 years ago, and I loved it. I was like, where did that go? What happened to that? And I've completely forgot about it until last night, 5, 6 years later, and now I'm pretty excited about it because it's just a new thing I did 6 years ago. So every what I realize, especially with the creative journey, which creative journey is everything, everybody, like creative journey can be found in accounting, engineering, any walk of life. It's not just the arts, and these creative processes are they're beyond time and space. And I think what we try to put them into a box of like this needs to be done in this certain amount of time. One is helpful sometimes to get something done. I need deadlines, but then two, we got to be flexible with that creative process because, like you were saying, it's easy to throw judgment on the timing of things when in fact I've heard so many stories. I know John Cleese, famous British, actor and comedian, he talked about his timing with writing scripts, and he had a script that he had to get done, got it done, thought it was pretty good, but then he lost it and he was so upset. And then he actually couldn't find it for many months and was like, no, I put so much effort into it. I don't even want to bother rewriting it. 6, 7 months or to a year go by. He ends up just really wanting to complete that idea. So he's okay, I'll have to rewrite the script, rewrites it, sends it in. Everyone loves it. He ends up discovering the old script that he thought he lost like a year later, started to read it, and he's like, oh, this is total crap. I'm so glad I'm so glad I rewrote that. So all of these things like that we think are even massive mistakes or failures or upheavals in our process that we at the time are probably going to get very upset about, they're all happening for a reason. And the larger picture of these creative endeavors, sometimes things can coalesce and come together 10, 15 years down the road, and we just don't even, you can't have that awareness. So we have to learn to let go.
Right. I was listening to a podcast with Richard Rudd, who I love dearly, the creator of the Gene Keys. And he said something that the Gene Keys took 7 years for him to write. And I heard that recently, and I was like, okay, I'm okay.
Yeah,
Like
5 years is nothing.
yeah, 5 years is okay. I'm still on track. And I really appreciate it. But I think, this opens up just a whole different conversation in that, listener, when was the last time that you were able to go back to something that you did, maybe something that you created, or maybe it was an old experience that you had that you have maybe had not thought of in a long time. Maybe that was a very painful experience. And where are you today? Can you actually measure and do just a quick, non judgmental evaluation and see where are you today? And if you were, do you still feel a little, tinge, or do you actually kind of laugh at certain things like, wow, I can't believe I did that? I mean, I can go back to some of my couple of my relationships and I can look going, man, I cannot believe that I was there in this relationship when I knew that it wasn't healthy to stay in. And I am a completely different person where I wouldn't even consider um, exposing myself to something that was, in my mind, in my own personal journey, not the healthiest. Um, but even just jobs that you've had, kind of going back and to do a review session on yourself. Have you ever done that,
Oh my
Chris?
God, Lisa, I'm just thinking, I'm like, I remember when I was a penguin mascot, one of my jobs, it was the funniest thing. It was like some really boring convention, and I worked for a basement installation company, and their mascot just happened to be a penguin. And I wore this penguin suit for like 5 days straight, sweating my butt off in there, just dying. of overheat and all this kind of stuff. And it was hilarious. I was a talking mascot too. I've abandoned the not talking. I was cracking jokes everywhere, walking up to other stands, messing around with people's exhibits and stuff. And it was hilarious. I just look back at some of the random weird jobs I've had. I'm like, how did I even get into that position? Or relationships, like you said, like how was I with that person? Not even like judging the other person, more like judging me, and like what was I doing there? But that's all part of our life process. And I don't know about you, but when you're writing this book right now, I know I'm experiencing it right now, working on this course, and this course of mine that I'm doing. And I find as I'm doing it, I'm realizing every single moment of my life, all the mistakes, everything, have all happened for a reason, because they're coming together in these teachings and in these presentations and these podcasts that we're doing. It's all coming together, and I'm blown away at some of the most random weird parts of my life that all of a sudden are connecting, and it's none of it's a mistake, weirdly enough, although it can totally at the time be like, what is going on? This is the most random thing ever.
You know what that reminds me of is, remember Connect the Dots,
Yeah,
the coloring piece. And it was one of my favorite things to do as a kid. And I remember the ones that I loved were going to numbers that I couldn't find right away. They were like over on left field. I'm like, where is this Connect the Dots taking me? And it's only until we finish the entire thing. And sometimes when excuse me, we even color it in partly, where we realize what the full picture is. And I think that that is so much about what you're saying. At least that's the visual that I'm getting,
totally.
is that, we have this, I think, a beautiful, if we can be patient enough to allow for life to come full circle and not cut it off at the knees because we're done and we don't want. This is the principle of rhythm, actually. Um, the principle of rhythm says that life has this certain circadian rhythm, and oftentimes experiences aren't quite ready for us to end before we start a new one. And so that reminds me of what you're saying, is that you, by just, creating this beautiful course, by the way, which I want you to talk about really quickly, is that you, in developing this, you're actually have these wonderful insights and introspections of all the dots that are being connected in order to make this such a rich and powerful program.
Yeah, it's just like your books, Lisa. I mean, for me, it's just like coming from the depths of my soul, and it's all kind of writing itself. And so I know it's the same when I've read your books. That's what it feels like. It just feels like it's like a soul. It's gonna sound not poetic, a soul dump instead of a brain dump. It's like a soul dump, just all this information and thoughts all coming from your higher self. And that's what this course is called, Unlock Your Inner Superhero. And well, what I'm realizing is it's going to be a beautiful opportunity to collaborate with lots of different people, including you with Wisdom from the Edge, and there can be a lot of crossover with the teachings here. And that course is really just about unlocking your inner potential, and we've talked about that in lots of other episodes.
Yeah.
We've got this thing called junk DNA. It makes up 98.2% of our whole DNA, totally untapped. It's like operating your cell phone and using the contacts app as your only thing in your phone. When we have a camera, we have augmented reality, we have every other app on the planet that we're not even. It's like using a phone and just tapping into one person. That's what we are. So that's what this course basically dives into. But that's also, it's a micro and macrocosm example of everything that we're learning here on Wisdom from the Edge, just kind of coming at it with maybe a different lens and a couple of different practices. So the cool thing about all of that is, even my weird random jobs, like a penguin mascot or something, like working at Starbucks, or planting trees, working at apple orchards, whatever. It all plays a role in all these weird teachings and things that are coming into this course. I'm really starting to realize all those areas of my life that I once looked at back at and thought were kind of useless or random or weird, or like, what was I thinking, all play a part. It's all part of our life experience, and that's what we bring to the table with anything now that we do. So Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's there's always this polarity, this two sides, and the first thing is that we can look back and do a self assessment and realize that where we are today, we can make very different decisions than we did in the past. But at the same time, to really appreciate and be grateful for those experiences because they really shape who you are today. Um, It's a Wonderful Life. It comes out in the winter every Christmas holiday
Perfect.
time, and it's a must for me because without us individually being here, life would really be very different.
Yeah.
And um, so, viewer and listener, you are so needed in this world, in this life, in this time. And for you to find what your purpose is. And if you do, congratulations and run with it. If you're unsure, tap into your intuition and know what that is. But you're needed here on this planet to do extraordinary things. And I don't believe in competition because everything that we do it with our own creative uniqueness. And so it doesn't matter if you are a tarot reader, you know, and there's a gazillion tarot readers on YouTube, but you have a unique spin, or, a doctor, or an entrepreneur of something that, like we've got a nonprofit. There's a gazillion nonprofits out there. There are other organizations that do something similar, but they are different from us because we're different. So, really just take the time to give yourself that gift. And it is a gift that you give to yourself. And then you spread that gift like throwing seeds out in the spring to the world.
I love that.
Um, Chris, I just want to say I'm so excited about your superhero course because you and I are huge fans of Marvel.
Yeah. I was about to make a Marvel
And
reference.
yeah, I mean, we might as well. I mean, I have not seen Guardians of the Galaxy #3. I don't know if you have,
Not
but
yet.
I heard it was pretty good. I'd like to see it in the theaters before it ends. I know that there's some other movies that are coming. They're coming out. There's a Shazam movie. I haven't seen that one. Um, I know that there is another Baby Yoda
The Mandalorian.
coming out.
Yeah.
A little. I think it's a Mandalorian kind of movie. I don't know if it's the Mandalorian
Okay.
itself, but anyway, listener, where do you want to play in your life? What is it that lights you up?
And like, what life experience do you look back on that what you once thought was random or totally out there, or just like, what was I thinking? And how is that now connecting into your current present day life? Because we can all think back on certain things, relationships even that may have at the time been horrific or terrible, and now we've come out of with so many lessons and learnings that we're like, wow, thank God I actually had that situation happen, because now I'm just so much more prepared for things, or I'm so much more aware of things and myself, etc. Let us know in the comments, what you found that works, and connect with us. Leave us some comments, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Really helps us out. It's a small gesture, but means a lot to us and helps us to continue to spread our messages and our mission here at Wisdom from the Edge. And make sure you check out our next episodes or previous episodes on a whole variety of topics, where we just always go into how can you be the best version of yourself, and how can we be the best versions of ourselves, and then just sharing that with you beautiful people. So thank you
Hmm.
as always for
Thank you.
tuning in, everybody, and thank you, Lisa, for everything. I always
Thanks, Chris.
appreciate these episodes with you.
Thank you. It's lovely. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Wisdom from the Edge. It's such a pleasure to have you with us. And make sure, if you haven't already, to follow, like, and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate that. It actually helps us out quite a lot in growing this platform. And also leave us a comment if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you, hear your thoughts about what you enjoyed on this episode and things that you want to offer, maybe ideas for a new episode or things that you want to hear more about. Also, make sure to check out our website, wisdomfromtheedge.org. All that is in the description below. And you can learn more about what we do, what offerings we have, and of course, the courses and programs. There's lots to learn from, a lot of really cool resources to check out to enhance your everyday life. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Wisdom from the Edge.